So we are starting this week's episode of the Midweek Howl, the non-paranormal part of the From the Shadows podcast. And as we record this, sadly, my last day of 3 weeks of vacation, and I think I need another vacation from my vacation. So what do you think about that, Howler?
They must have had a good one, I guess. I don't know. I don't. My life's been on vacation, so I've had 30 years of vacation, so I don't even know how to even
quantify that, Steve.
Yes, I don't know how you work and still do it.
Well, so you have been quasi-retired
my whole life.
Well, I wouldn't say your whole life. You've done some good work, but here recently, the last couple months, the job that you were doing.
I don't think you understand. No, but you think being a cop is work, dude? You don't have to screw with anybody or do anything but answer the radio. So you just drive around, listen to music, you know what I mean? Do whatever you want.
That's it.
Well, okay. I mean, if they call you, you have to answer the radio, right? You have to use your call for service. But those people, now, obviously, I did not work now I'm sure they're overloaded as hell, especially metropolitan guys. But you're run of the mill like I was in a rural county. They don't really want the cops unless they need the cops. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're the last resort because.
So you might pull them over here and there, give them a warning, let them go. You just don't screw with people. You know what I mean? Now I know that's alien because I know there's a lot of cops out there that made their bones just screwing with people trying to drive back and forth to work. I mean, that's the only way I can say it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, you've told many stories.
So
of the guys waiting on people.
And even when I was
work, yeah,
in federal law enforcement for 20 years, there was things I was, we used to say we were like a good surgeon. We got paid for what we were capable of doing, not necessarily what we did.
You
know what I mean?
I like that.
So,
should I adopt that at the post office when I go back tomorrow?
I don't know how.
Pay me for what I'm capable of doing, not for actually.
I have a post office story.
Let's hear a post office story.
So. My son is deployed in Europe, and he ordered a couple of things on Amazon and wanted them and had them shipped here to the house. And essentially, I've got to turn around and fill out a customs form and send them back to him in Europe, which I don't understand why he couldn't just get them shipped to him.
Will Amazon not ship them to him?
I don't know. And of course, part of it, he's in the Navy. He's out on a ship. So there's certain, but all that's to say is this. I filled out my customs form. He's got this pair of coveralls and a pair of boots. He wanted an extra uniform, couldn't get it on the ship. That way, when he's doing inspections, he's always got a new one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Smart.
So, but I was going to send him his iPad, so he could download movies and stuff too, right? Because he left it here because he went to boot camp and didn't take nothing with him. And then when I went out and met him, I said, "You want your iPad? I don't know if I'm going to have room," because he was flying military flight to Europe, and then he just didn't know what to expect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So all that's to say is this: I fill out my customs form, bring my box in, and the gal reads it and says, "Is this an iPad?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Is it brand new in the factory, unopened container?" And I said, "No." And she said, you can't ship it." And I was thinking it was like a tax issue with the European Union. Now hold on a second. The day before, she told me to send it to FPO was just like the United States of America. Sending it from here to a base over there is just like the United States of America.
Yeah.
That's what she told me.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to say, then why do I got to fill out a customs form if I'm sending it to Team America? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Okay, you're already behind the curtain. Counter for me, lady. She said, well, you can't send the iPad unless it's new in the factory, unopened container. And they still might send it back anyway. It'll probably take you a month to get it sent back, blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking it was going to be a European Union tax thing or some BS. And it's got to do with the fucking battery. The battery, apparently.
Why? Because if it's already been used,
I don't work there because it might short out and burn the airplane down or whatever conveyance.
Huh. Well, I suppose
and they assume, hold on a second. Now, the brand new one has got the same battery, right?
Yeah.
They assume that one's packed correctly. I was just reading all about it again today. They assume it's packed correctly,
So you've got an iPad. I've got an iPad. I've never unpacked the battery on my iPad. It's the same. The battery should be the same as it was when I took it out of the box.
The whole machine I guess, being in the box. Yes, you're right. The battery in the iPad is fully encapsulated and it's to power the device, which is why it theoretically can be shipped.
I
So
would
I
think
think, you know
so,
what I
right?
think this is? Hold on. I think this is a rule that people that's never worked around the government don't realize how screwed up the government is, right? Right? I mean, they don't. They don't.
Yes, yeah.
So this
I
is
think they have
something.
I think they have an idea, but they don't really have. They don't
So
really know.
this is something where some BS government worker somewhere can say, "I'm on a power trip. You can't ship that iPad." You know what I mean? And I'm ad-libbing. You know what I'm saying? So you have these people that have had so little power in their life that once they get the ability to say no for your iPad, they're going to do it because they
Well, of
blow your
course.
candle out to make themselves look brighter or something. I don't know, man. I just don't understand
That
if the
doesn't make any sense.
if the FP over there is just like Team America. I just don't understand. You know
So
what I mean?
can you not? So then theoretically, you shouldn't be able to ship an iPad across town in the mail if that's what they're worried about.
Yeah,
I mean,
hey, thank you,
I mean,
you.
I don't want my mail truck blowing up and catching on fire because somebody mispackaged a used, opened, not brand new iPad, right? I
I
mean,
guess, yeah. I don't, you know, man. I'm just grasping with so many things. I didn't win the Powerball, so that's what I'm
yeah,
struggling with.
yeah,
I
okay,
did not win the 1.5 billion dollars.
hmm
So I'm not picking out my Greek island right now, right?
yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out if the grass is dry enough to mow type stuff, right? I'm back to reality. So maybe that's what I'm struggling with more
No,
than
wait a
Karen
second. Now
telling me I can't ship
let's
that.
get
What?
back to the beginning then, because I talked about the whole being retired. You said, "Well, I've been retired for 30 years." That's most people listening. That's not their reality. So you're upset because you didn't win the Powerball, but your life, according to you, is still a little more sunshine and roses, right? Because
Well, hold
we're
on a
not
second.
really.
I had a guy say this to me one time about 20 years ago, and I didn't quite understand. He was a retired Air Force pilot, and I said something about him going back to work, because he's a fairly young guy. Are you going to keep working, or what are you going to do? And he said, there's a lot of things I would like to do, but in order for me to do them, I will have to go to work. So I have chosen not to do anything, and I don't have to work. So I'm one step above that, right? I do a few things and I work a little bit. I almost, I was recruited for a job the other day. Let me tell you what could pay off on this podcast. One of my
Okay.
super listeners
Yeah.
has recruited me for a job, and he did it in a way where it didn't seem that bad.
Okay. Okay.
Even though my barber told me, because I had thought about it last year, my barber said that's the worst thing you could ever do.
You know what I like? I like that you're sitting in the chair talking to your barber about job opportunities.
Oh, my
That's
old barber, yeah, he's retired too, but
he's
he had to cut
everybody where you're living's retiring. I don't get it.
No, well, I mean, he's 75 years old. He's been cutting hair for 55 years. I mean, it's about time for old Joe to throw in the towel.
Hang up the comb.
Yeah, I mean, but then my brother told me he's still doing some stuff under the radar in his daughter's chair at his daughter's house, because I guess his daughter's got a.
So he's doing some like haircut on demand kind of.
Only for the few people that I talked to him at a wedding not too long ago, and he was almost in tears when he walked up to me.
Okay? Why is that?
Well, because when my brother passed away, we were, that's one of the questions that the funeral homes got is, do you want to get his hair cut, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And me and my living brother said, we called Joe down to barber shop. Well, and Joe had just recently retired, right? So we called, we had his number. The funeral guy knew him, because he's just one of those guys, right, that everybody knows. And he lives out on the farm about 30 miles out of town. But anyhow, we called him up. Funeral director called him up and said, hey, I got a guy here. And of course, his first words were, who was it? And when he said that, Joe got a little upset because he'd been cutting he cut his hair for 50 years, right? So he knew my brother from the time he was 5-6 years old till the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he came up to me at this wedding and said, I should have cut his hair. It's bothered me that I said no. And maybe that's why he decided to cut a few hairs to people that know who he is in the neighborhood there, farmers and stuff, because that's his connection to
Yeah,
his
but
fan base. Let's just call it what
ima-
it is, fan base, right?
but imagine that, like, that'd be rough getting the call that somebody you had literally probably once a week, once every 2 weeks, had in your chair, cut their hair. You just like, you're sitting there and you talk to them and you get to know them, you know what they're doing, what their job is, about their family. And the next thing, and they're not supposed to die before you because they're 20 years younger.
And you know what not necessarily funny, but odd we're talking about this. I don't even know how we got on this. But
Don't know either. It's not on the list.
The old guys that run that shop, they all left in about a year's time, right?
Yeah.
What happened is a couple of them brought their grandkids in. One of them had his kid cutting hair, so they had a replacement. So they went from working 5 days a week to 3 days a week to 2 days a week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now they're all gone. In my I got several brothers left, but my one brother that lives right here by me and is kind of in my orb all the time. He is driving. He took possession of my brother had a BMW. My brother that passed away had a BMW 650i. It's a black 2-door. I don't know. For the time it was pretty fancy. It's still pretty cool. It's kind of a head turning BMW, big body, 2-door. 18-inch chrome wheels, fat tires. Tires about the size of my computer monitor. And he drives it every once in a while. And he took it to the barbershop the other day, and he was right first thing the barbershop opened, and he said, I pulled right up in the front where the door is. There's one or two spots where you could park right in front of the door and parallel to the curb. So he said, I pulled right up there, and he said those guys were looking at me when I pulled. The windows all tinted out on this thing, and it's black. So he said, I parked and I looked in to see if anybody was in there, and I could see that they were all staring at this car and me. So he said, I went in there and I sat down and I started talking, and the guy finally said, where'd you get that car? And he said, well, it was my brother's. He passed away last year. And the guy goes, oh, dude, he used to get his hair cut in here, and Jamie. And I said, and my brother said, yeah. And he said, we didn't know where he was at. And when you pulled up, we said, dude, he hadn't been in here in forever. Well, there's a reason, obviously. These young guys don't read the obituary.
They didn't even know.
They didn't even know he was gone. But anyway, back to the haircutting guy, which circles back to where I'm going with this job opportunity, right?
Yeah. So
there's a value in doing something every day, right?
Yes.
That a job is more than a job, right? For people's physical well-being, mental well-being, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think him cutting hair, even at his advanced age, 2 days a week, it gives him something to look forward to. That Tuesday I'm going to have 4 or 5 guys come in, and it's got something to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I get, I totally get that, because I was joking. I've been off for 3 weeks, but first couple of weeks I worked like the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the middle of them, because if I took 3 straight weeks off, I'd have just not gone back to work. I'd have retired. Okay, just because I hate to say it, I don't really miss going out and delivering the mail when I'm not delivering the mail.
See, but you could have canceled this kitchen remodel or this house remodel and maybe not work so hard.
But I did. Well, but I didn't. No, that had nothing to do with me working hard.
Okay.
But I have so much to do, even besides, and I'm not alone. Everybody has their days jam packed full of stuff to do, and
I doubt it. But go ahead.
Well, I think a lot of people do, but there is that reassurance of, well, if I go out here and do this for 2 weeks, there's going to be some money to show up in my bank account, and I can count on that. Because most of the time, this other stuff that we do pays money, but it doesn't always pay as much or in in the same timely fashion.
Right.
And so that security and that peace of mind is worth something. Apparently your dog agrees with me.
I just put my mute on. I think the neighbor boy come over, and they're going berserk, aren't they? Can you believe that?
Yeah. So he's just trying to welcome me back to work.
They ran upstairs like a herd of damn buffaloes.
But you say the word berserk, and do you know what it reminds me of? Is something we talked about that got us right into the episode. Was who watched the Johnny Manziel documentary or whatever you want to call it?
Documentary.
Documentary on the hour-long thing or hour and a half on Netflix.
I don't know how long it was, but it was great. I mean, it was riveting, wasn't it?
What? And I mean, okay, as a Cleveland Browns fan, I did not think he was a guy the Browns should have drafted, and I was right, along with many other Browns fans, because you just kind of knew there was something off with the guy. Like, he was a great college athlete, big time competitor, but man, you can't ignore all the red flags. And when the Texans and the Cowboys, which I knew at the time passed up on him, but I had forgotten. But when those guys pass up on him, knowing what a big personality and what a draw he would be just in the state of Texas, especially for the Texans, that's all you needed to know if you're the Browns.
Well, why did they pass on him?
Because
you're saying that they might have had some inside information. It was less to do with him being 5'10" and
because I don't think that matters. I mean, Drew Brees was barely 5. Russell Wilson.
Yeah, but hold on a second.
If you can play, you can play, especially if you're a competitor. There's a spot for you at that level, because the stuff he did in college, he did some really crazy good stuff. Okay, aside on the field. Now, off the field, he did some really crazy.
Oh, that off the field stuff was off the hook, wasn't it? I mean, but you know what? Hey, hold on a second. That is why, when I read these articles that say so-and-so pro football player was drunk with a bunch of hookers in whatever, or even Hollywood people, right? Or pick your poison, right? Who's the guy that played Tony Soprano? James, what's his name, right?
Oh, Gandolfini.
Right, and they were talking about when he died, when he had a heart attack in Italy. Of course, he was on a month-long hiatus in Italy at the Hilton or wherever he's staying. And did you see what all he ate and drunk that 24 hours prior to his death? You know what I'm saying?
I did.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know if I can Google it up here, because I'll get my stomach will start hurting reading it all.
You keep going. I'll Google it up.
Yeah, and my point was, that's why people become movie stars. People like Joey Manziel, they want to be pro athletes, not necessarily because the love of the game. It's to get that $8.5 million freaking paycheck that allows them to hang out with Drake or Alex Rodriguez, or you know what I mean, or whatever. Now, obviously, he didn't have the emotional strength, or I think you told me, nobody in his circle pulled him aside and explained to him this is a marathon, not a sprint. And
well, what was funny is last night, we took my aunt and uncle up to Lake Erie to. My uncle had literally not been up to Lake Erie, where my grandparents had trailers and a boat from the 60s all the way up to when I was a freshman in high school. So my uncle had grown up around Lake Erie, water skiing, swimming, all that stuff. So we took him up there it was kind of he's the last connection, to where my grandparents were, and him and my aunt are two of the last people that can really, hey, remember when we did this, remember we did that, and I wanted Christy just to be a part of it and stuff. And so, but you're talking about Johnny Manziel, and I started telling my uncle about watching that, and he should watch it. And he goes, well, his grandpa, he came from money. His grandpa was just filthy, stinking rich. And I go, no, he wasn't. And so there's my uncle who had bought into that whole.
Well, they never said the grandpa wasn't rich.
Yeah, they did. They said they made it all up.
He said he made it the oil money part, but. Did you see? I don't. Hold on a second. Yeah, and his dad seemed to. There's more said in because Grandpa helped him launder the money, right?
Well, I think they created the story that his grandpa was wealthy, so they could launder the money through his grandpa. I think that's how it kind of played out. They never really said that you wouldn't have, if your grandpa was wealthy, you wouldn't have to come up with the story. You know what I'm saying? So I think
people don't care about. I mean, do you know who's the starting quarterback for Ohio State Buckeyes this year?
They don't know yet.
Okay, pick one out.
I don't even know. Devin Brown. I think it's Devin Brown.
What's his grandpa do?
I have no idea.
There you go. Who gives a shit about what your grandpa does?
Well, but remember back in that time, if you
Back in that time, it was only 10 years ago, dude. I mean, think about it. Johnny Manziel's only like 30 right now.
He's 29. But think
That's
about,
what I'm saying.
but think about,
he can come back. If I owned an NFL team, I would have watched that. I'd have called him up.
well, you notice 30 some guys didn't call him up. But
because
college football though has changed
hold on.
because of the NIL money, okay, of the athletes being able to get paid and legitimately above board.
And that brings me to another question. I don't even know why we're on all this college football, but how much do they get paid? A percentage of what they bring in?
Oh no, like okay, so we got a guy that plays for the Buckeyes, Cade Stover, and he's from the same high school our buddy Chris Hahn is from. So he's from the area. His family are farmers. Okay, he's got an NIL deal with John Deere. Because his family's got to be well known because his story is a typical Midwestern Ohio kid or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He got a combine. Okay, that was his NIL money through one deal. Was a combine. Combine's about $650,000.
Yeah, for a good starter combine.
Yeah, well,
I seen what the Missouri State Fair the other day. They said it was $1 million.
It
had the biggest head. The head was so big, it swiveled in the middle. You know what I mean? It was an articulated head.
It swiveled in the middle.
Swivel's not the right term, but like the right side. You remember when John Deere first came out? Y'all run side hills out there. You know what a side hill combine is?
No, we don't do
okay,
that.
So John Deere's got one called a side hill that came out probably 20 years ago now. Okay, where the machine.
It's like your mower deck, kind of.
Yes. Okay, but your machine, your hopper and your cab will stay straight, and the machine will articulate. You with me?
Yeah.
And I wish I'd copied the thing down. Anyway, it was like the head could. It had a big like a bean, what I call a bean head. You know what I mean? It didn't have a corn head. It had a bean head or a grain head, if you will. And that thing had a hinge in it to where the right side could be independent from the left side. You know what I mean? Like if you were up against something or
yeah, I know what you're saying. That's insane.
Yeah. Anyway,
I mean, it's like, okay, so like Johnny Manziel, not to give away too much, but he was making 30 grand in cash a month signing autographs. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I have a friend who was a high school coach of one of the guys going into Ohio State this year. And after his senior year, before he even, he had gone on his recruiting visit to Ohio State, he had signed an NIL deal for $200,000 or $300,000. And he is probably fourth or fifth string at his position going in. Now it's a high profile position, but I mean, that's a lot of money when after my first college football game, they said, hey, walk in here, we're going to give you your meal money. Mm-hmm. And they handed us $10.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow.
And told you where you had to spend it, this pizza place. No.
Well, but that was just it. It was a Saturday. We had just played Rutgers and nothing was open. Part of our football stuff was we ate at the training table. Well, the cafeteria wasn't open at 9-10 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, so they gave us the money. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? I can't even drive to Taco Bell, because if I could have, I would have. I don't even remember what I ate, but I didn't get to spend the $10 because I couldn't even get to some place to eat from there. But all that being said, it's interesting if you're a sports fan, if you're a fan of tragedy.
If you're just a fan of having fun. I mean, when he got to talking about, I still don't understand why he cut the best friend loose, because he could have just hung out. They just needed to quit making money under the table.
Well, it's the typical, it happens all the time in like the music business and all that. When you move on to the next level and bigger,
I'm still here with you.
I know. Bigger management comes in.
I'm still here with you, regardless.
I know. But they sometimes dictate that stuff. Like our buddy Wade was talking to a guy that he met a couple years ago who was really a nobody, up and coming singer-songwriter. And the guy's got some songs recorded by some big time people and signed a publishing deal. and wants to write with Wade, but can't do it himself. He has to go through his publishing company, and his publishing company has to schedule Wade in there somewhere if they see fit that he's good enough to write with them. So it's once they invest in you, like those agents invest time and money, and managers, it's the same way as publishers and stuff. They're not going to let you waste a couple hours of your day with your best buddy who, had shady dealings under the table, or they're just not going to do it. They got too much money, time and money invested, and you're going to do.
I don't have a publisher.
Yeah, I know. Now, speaking of that, what do you think about what's going on in Hawaii? I mean, you're such a well-traveled guy. Have you ever been to Maui?
I'm going to close the 50-foot head on this combine. The X9 series John Deere harvesters, John Deere's biggest harvesters, price run from $780,000 to $1 million, depending on options. The heart of it is a 50-foot articulated thresher head.
That's
Draper
insane.
head.
That's 50
insane. 50 foot. You think those guys, around here, especially smaller farms, they leave that head on, drive down the highway. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. Well,
you think they leave that thing on and drive down the highway 50 foot? You couldn't drive down the interstate.
You couldn't get it between.
Interstate's 10 lanes in both, 10 foot in both lanes, usually 10 to 12 foot right-hand shoulder and 6 to 8 foot inbound shoulder. So you can't even drive down the interstate.
Well, I remember seeing pictures growing up, like out there in the plains, where they'd have to have like the fields and stuff would be so massive.
Yeah, North Dakota. You see some of those wheat guys in North Dakota and Canada. They have
like 10,
5, 6 of them in a row. 8 of them in a row. Mm-hmm.
So this would probably eliminate the need to have that many in a row.
I doubt it. You know what it says it does here? Hold on before 16,500 bushels. Oh, I lost my place here. Hold on. I don't know if it's a day or an hour. Surely it can be an hour.
No, heavens. I don't know. I guess.
I don't know.
No.
Okay, hold on a second. In it can do 30 acres an hour in wheat and can harvest up to 7,200 bushels in high yield corn an hour.
Oh my God.
It can fill, which is enough to do 7 semi trucks per hour. And not North Missouri semi trucks because they load the shit out of them, but I guess in a normal place where people abide by the weight rules. So
yeah, see, those combines aren't for people around here.
Yeah. So anyhow, now that we've closed the John Deere combine out, let's switch gears to James Gandolfini's last meal includes 2 portions of fried king prawns, foie gras. What's that?
Foie gras is that? Isn't that the
goose?
Stuff they do? It's goose. It's
goose breast or something, isn't it?
Isn't it great? Isn't that stuff they put on? Oh, that's poutine. What is foie gras?
I don't know. At least 8 alcoholic drinks, which comprise of 2 martinis.
That's great.
I was looking for something a little smoother than this. Mm-hmm. But my point being on movie stars and athletes, that's why they go out and make that money. So if you want to go to Italy and drink and eat yourself to death, 2 pina coladas, 2 beers, and 4 shots of rum.
According to French law, foie gras is defined as the liver of a duck or a goose fattened by gavage. I don't even know what gavage is.
So what they do is, I can tell you exactly what this is because I watched it this morning.
Oh, force feeding is gavage.
Yeah. So what they do is they got these ducks. The big duck that looks like a goose. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So they soak his shell corn in water so it's softened up, and they grab that goose and who's wanting to eat apparently, and they have this big tube that goes down its neck to its belly, and it dumps it looked like about 2 cups a day, and they confine them almost like you do veal or something. You know what I mean? And for some reason that makes the liver bigger. I don't really understand it, right? But
it's an overdrive, probably.
Yes, and essentially the guy that was showing it on the thing, Rick Stein, was saying that he couldn't imagine them allowing them to do that in Britain. You know what I mean? If they tried to do that for Britain. And the French guys were just like, hey, you know what I mean? We take our food serious here, more serious than this duck. If it was good enough for King Richard, we're not going to change. Basically, hey, we're not going to change for a bunch of college-educated do-gooders. You know what I mean?
Gluttony
you think
is still alive and well. All right.
Yes, and that's where I was thinking, you think it's bad to force feed that duck. You got these fat ass Americans or whoever dudes eating that duck liver and drinking 4 bottles of wine and eating a bunch of tofu or something, or whatever. They're force feeding themselves. Maybe they're guilty. Maybe that makes them feel at one with the duck that they force fed, killed by force feeding themselves, right? So suicide by bite, one bite at a time.
Should James Gandolfini's real reason, his death, be savage? Because he force fed.
I'm just saying, of all the people that movie stars that die of opioid overdose and drug toxicity and stuff, he had 8 liquor shots in 8 prawns and shrimp, and I thought it said a whole bunch of stuff, right? Hey, if you just want to sit there at the Hilton and eat yourself to death in Rome while you're going, because he apparently went to a lot of church. He went to church over there, and he was, he had Italian citizenship. They give him Italian citizenship, just like they do all the gangster Italian movie stars. And more power to him, right? More power to him. If that's the life he wants to live.
Yeah, he's not hurting anybody but himself.
Nobody.
No, himself. Well, the
technically, he hurt his providers by killing himself, right? So he screwed over them chefs by dying too soon.
He had so much more
money run out. So
he had so much more foie gras
to him a disservice.
But okay. So I asked you about Maui. What do you think about Maui? Have you seen some of that stuff?
I did, and I was reading about it all morning actually, because I find it intriguing on so many levels.
Yeah.
Starting with the fact that, of course, now that it's burnt down, that apparently for 20 years they've been told that between the wind, the weather, the non-native grass and shrubbery that has been introduced that apparently has taken over in places,
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the only one main highway in and out, one small highway, still got the classic feel to it. And it could have been an article, just like everything, right? When a tragedy occurs, the first thing we're going to do is spend a bunch of money. So it could have been an article written to give them more money, which they said that they had an interview with one of the old emergency management guys that said, hey, I predicted this, and this, and we should change that, and that. And basically I was shot down because they wanted to always keep it the way they want to look like it's looked for 100 years. So they weren't going to widen the streets. They weren't going to, They weren't going to do some of this stuff. They weren't going to cut the brush. They weren't, there were some things that the city did, some things that they didn't. And at the end of the day, like my mother says, when the Lord, it's your time and he calls, you're going, whether you're ready or not. You know what I'm saying? So, hey.
I saw some interesting, was it 2 brothers and their mom that actually jumped in the ocean?
There was
see that?
Hundreds of people that jumped in the ocean.
Yeah, well, I figured there had to be, but I only saw this one story, and they're like,
and I guess a lot of they were mad. There was one story they were mad about this. There was a dive boat that was giving these snorkeling tours,
mm-hmm.
and they apparently just sit out in a dive boat and watch people jump in the ocean. Eventually, I think they saved some, but people were mad. Well, they're just out there effing snorkeling while the place is burning. Yeah, but they were told earlier in the day at noon or whatever, the fire was under control, and then the wind changed and it wasn't. So I can't imagine how hard it would be to fight a fire in steep terrain like that in dry. When you're on an island, especially, it's not like you have a fire here. They just keep calling other fire departments, right? So more people
from.
Yeah, the people don't have anybody to come. And I don't think the population, I love Hawaii. I've been there a couple of times, right? But their population is pretty laid back. They are not going to put most of them don't even have a car or truck to put a blue light on to be a volunteer fireman. You know what I mean? So who's going to fight these fires? You know what I mean? You're 15, 20 firefighters from your local fire department. Once they're exhausted, what are you going to do?
Yeah, there's not much backup.
The pro tip, if you're going to take anything away from this podcast, is if you're going to jump in the ocean to get away from anything, try to take something that floats with you, because some of those people apparently got so tired of treading water that they expired.
That'd be awful.
And then some people just sat in their cars as the roadway started backing up. They just didn't abandon their cars and run to the ocean, right? They were waiting for the street to clear, and
they got caught in their cars, right?
Yes, But when it's when you got to escape from your life, I mean, it's pretty well no holds barred, right?
That's what I would think for sure.
But,
And all I could do is seeing those pictures of the devastation. It kind of reminded me of we were talking about them dropping the atomic bomb and the pictures, like it just burnt everything to a crisp. I mean, just amazing. It's amazing, but pretty sad. I mean, it's pretty sad, but I mean, that's
actually what I had thought earlier, and I thought a couple of days ago, I was at the Missouri State Fair, and I thought this, and I thought, man, I better not even say it on the podcast, but it could be if the Hawaiians are built anything like the Missourians at the Missouri State Fair, it could have just been an uncontrollable grease fire. After the first couple got knocked down, that could have been why it ran rampant to the sea.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.